Hi, I'm Dan Blackman, clinical psychologist with Durham and Dale's Clinical Psychology. Today, I'm going to address the frequently asked question, what's the difference between a clinical psychologist, counsellor, and psychotherapist? Well, the main differences are in the areas of training and the work that's done on the basis of that training. So, a clinical psychologist will undertake a first undergraduate degree in psychology, and then they'll complete a government funded NHS based doctorate program that equips them to work with people across the lifespan. So, children, adults, older adults, and people with learning disabilities. Clinical psychologists are trained to specialize in psychological assessment and psychological therapies, including cognitive behavioral therapy and at least one other approach. They also train in research and evaluation. Importantly, clinical psychologists are regulated by a statutory body, which is the Healthcare Professions Council, which oversees standards in training programs and in professional behavior. Now, in contrast, a counsellor will complete a level 5 diploma, which is equivalent to a foundation degree level, which is prior to undergraduate degree. Some counsellors will complete trainings at a higher level, but this isn't essential for them to be recognised by the UKCP or BACP, which are their main professional organisations. Typically, counsellors provide support to individuals with mental health problems of lower levels of severity and are often involved in helping people to adjust to changes that have happened in their lives. Counsellors have no statutory regulation. And a psychotherapist will have usually a relevant first degree in a subject such as nursing or perhaps occupational therapy. They may be qualified in one of these areas. So they may be an occupational therapist or a social worker or a nurse. Some psychotherapy trainings require people to undertake a period of personal therapy prior to training, but this isn't always the case. Training is usually at postgraduate diploma or sometimes master's level, and those trainings are overseen by the national bodies, which you can see on this slide. Some psychotherapists work mainly in the NHS, such as cognitive behavioral therapists, and some work principally in independent practice, so psychoanalytic psychotherapists, for example. Again, psychotherapists have no statutory regulation. So overall, the main areas of comparison are level of training. So a clinical psychologist trains to PhD level, a psychotherapist to postgraduate diploma or master's level, and a counsellor typically around undergraduate level. Also, the number of therapies that the professionals are trained to provide differs. So a clinical psychologist will provide at least two, and a psychotherapist and counsellor will provide one. Whether the training occurs in the NHS is also relevant. It's always the case for a clinical psychologist, sometimes the case for a psychotherapist, and usually not the case for a counsellor. Whether the profession has statutory regulation is also key. Clinical psychologists, yes, we're overseen by the Healthcare Professions Councils, and psychotherapists and counsellors are not regulated. Are the professionals trained to use research so that they can apply evidence in a critical way when deciding how to treat somebody? Clinical psychologists, we are, and psychotherapists and counsellors are not trained in research in the same way. And what age groups are the professionals trained to work with? So, clinical psychologists work across the lifespan, whereas psychotherapists and counsellors typically will work with children or adults, but usually not trained to work with both. So that addresses the question of what's the difference between a clinical psychologist, counsellor, and psychotherapist. I'm Dan Blackman with Durham and Dale's Clinical Psychology, www.ddcp.co.uk.